Ben, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Eric. How are you?
Oh, all is good. Mr. Clean, I hear they call you nowadays.
Not everybody calls me that, but I've heard it a couple times. Yeah.
I had Austin Bushman on the show, and he had just shot clean down here in Texas. And I tried calling him Mr. Clean, and he's like, no, what I did doesn't
he
compare.
Looks like Mr. Clean,
right?
More than me.
He just fits, he fits everything. But he said, "Oh man, what I did doesn't come close to what Ben did." So that's what I want to talk to you about. You know, the AG.
Yeah, I mean,
Cup.
he's still got a 2-day clean, so
man,
that's pretty crazy. I wish I was there to see it, but
anytime you shoot a clean, it's just perfection, right? Anytime you achieve perfection.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the only one that did it, so I think that was a great accomplishment. But again,
ever so far.
I want to talk about yours because from what I hear, it was quite impressive.
It was just a magical day, really. I mean, I've shot for almost a decade now, and I haven't had a day really come close. I've had a couple individual 1-days at 2-day matches that, you know, I was 2 or 3 or 4 down for the day, which was good shooting, but just cleaning that day at that match at that, you know, specific time, it was really special to me.
Let's back it up and find out how, number one, what is the AG Cup? Number two, how you prepare to get to the AG Cup, and then we'll talk about what it was actually like shooting the AG Cup.
Yeah. So the AG Cup has been around since 2019. Back then it was an invite only, and it took 20 of the best shooters at the time. And really the biggest stipulation was you had to have won a 2-day match just to get the invite. And I kind of lucked out. I actually ended up being a replacement because when they sent the invites, I hadn't won a 2-day match yet. And I guess it was just kind of luck that once they sent out the invites, the next week or two, I started winning some matches. I won my first match in Alabama, and then the next weekend I shot another match and I won that one. So I already had 2 matches won by the time before the AG Cup started, that first one. So, I mean, it started out as just a way to make the sport a little bit more of a professional event. You know, there's still a lot of sponsors supporting the PRS in individual matches. You know, there's still money in it, but it's kind of taken the professional side of long range shooting to the next level.
Yeah, that's
it's kind of constantly evolving.
Yeah, that's a pretty neat concept. I talked to Tom about it and how it all came about. Him, you know, putting on the first AG Cup, and he said it was meant to be a 1-year thing, like just one time, and you know, it has evolved into what it is now. So gear wise, what do you shoot?
I shoot impact actions. I shoot mainly a 6-dasher. I've shot that since 2017, and it's really hard to beat. So shoot a Masterpiece Arms BA comp chassis. The barrels I use kind of are Bartlines, Kriegers, and Proofs. I'm not really partial. Shoot probably Bartlines more than anything. Right now, I'm kind of going. I got guns with both, but APA brakes and Ace brakes, they're both really good. Tangent Theta scopes, Hawkins 34 millimeter mounts, and Trigger Tech triggers, and Armageddon shooting bags.
What about the brass bullets and powder?
Lapua brass, Berger bullets, and Varget.
Precision reloading can be a very complicated topic. It doesn't matter whether you started last week or 50 years ago. The same principles still apply. We're all looking for the smallest groups possible at the farthest distance that we can shoot. One thing that I have learned over the years is that having the right tool for the job makes things way easier and much more fun in the reloading room. If you're looking to buy ones and cry ones, look no further than Short Action Customs. ShortActionCustoms.com. How do you go about developing a load for your PRS rifles?
Loads, I mean, they're getting easier and easier. Most guns are close enough that I can just kind of shoot my leftover ammo from my last barrel, and I can really get a good head start on load development just by shooting that. So most of the time my load's anywhere from 31.6 to 32 grains of Varget. So just years and years of shooting a load somewhere in there, it's pretty easy to find one. I like to get around 300 rounds on a barrel before I even start testing for match loads. And once I do, it's usually very easy.
Yeah, and that's the benefit of sticking to one cartridge, because over the years, like you said, barrel after barrel after barrel, if it's the same reamer, I assume it's all the same reamer. Same barrel length, same everything. Then it starts to really get easy, because they start to, the load development just gets easier, because it just, you take the data from the previous 2 or 3 or 4 barrels, and that gives you a good starting point, especially when you shoot the leftover ammo from one into the other, and you can already tell where you're at, velocity wise, if you're slower or faster than the previous barrel, and that kind of tells you more or less where you're at.
Yeah, it's so fun, like throwing leftover ammo in the new barrel, and it shoots the exact same speed, and it's just one hole at 100. And I do a lot of 100 and 300 yard testing, because that's just what I have the most access to. And I've shot a lot of matches where I hadn't even shot past 300 and just take it to the match. And sometimes you start out on a long range stage and get, first round dead center hits at 1,000 or further. So I've seen that too many times. That I'm not too worried about going out and making sure everything's perfect at distance. I just got a lot of confidence in my setup.
That's key right there. If you don't have confidence, then anything can throw you off, right? How beneficial is it to know that if you miss, it's going to be wind and not elevation?
It really depends on the match, but I think if you miss on elevation, it does get into your head, I think, quicker than a wind call, especially if it just makes sense. Okay, I just burned one off the left edge. All right, I need to, add 3/10 and send it. And it's really nice to get, those corrections to center, and, what you see actually translate on the target. As far as elevation goes, it's a little bit harder to trust. You still end up having to do that, especially if you see, the target go into a berm, high or low. It's kind of easy to copy and paste that adjustment. And if it works, then you just got to trust it from the rest of that point on. But I would say it's very rare that I have a elevation miss, anymore. Really. Some matches out west, you don't have the luxury of a berm or anything. So I think there's a little bit of weirdness going on out there as far as just lighting effects. And, I think you get a little bit more dramatic crosswind jumps and drops, and just sort of weird funneling. I shoot out in the southeast more than anything. So I feel like it just makes a little bit more sense for my style of shooting out here.
Which burger bullets do you use?
105 hybrid.
Have you tried any of the others?
Right now, I just haven't really felt like I've needed to. I shot a match a couple years ago, right when the 109s came out, and there were some burger reps, and I think they gave 50 bullets to every shooter there, which was really cool. And I did end up shooting them, and they shot great. The So, I mean, I would be okay with trying out some 109s eventually, but especially when I go out west and need a little bit more BC. But in the Southeast, I just really I don't feel like I need more BC.
Well, you're on that camp of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and that's actually a really good camp to be at, because you already know the bullet, you know the drops, you know everything about it. It's jumping to even 109s for slightly bump in BC. Now you have to relearn that bullet. It may take you. You may jump right into it and not have an issue, but you may find that now you're shooting high or shooting low or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Just because you don't know that bullet.
Yep, for sure.
What speed are you shooting your dasher at?
That's another thing I've kind of went back and forth over the years. I would say more times than not. Well, this last 3 years, I've kind of slowed them down a little bit. So I'm okay with shooting them in the 2870 to 2900 range. When I started shooting dasher, I shot them around 2935 to 45 range. And now I'm kind of getting back into that a little bit quicker speed. And it all depends on the barrel. If it shoots good at the slower one, I'll shoot it there. If it likes the faster range, I'll shoot it there.
Yeah, well, just gotta believe the target, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you talked about how long did it take you to win the first 2-day match since you started shooting PRS?
It took me a while. I started out shooting 1-days in 2014, and then I didn't shoot a ton of those. I probably shot 7 or maybe a dozen of 1-days, and then I jumped into 2-days in March of 2015, and it took all the way till the fall of 2019 to get my first win.
So about 4 years.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think it was right around 30 2-day matches.
So how long did it take you to win the second one after the first one?
After the first one, it took me 1 week. It was like 6 days or 7 days I won the second.
Isn't that amazing how that happens? Why do you think that was? Do you think there was some kind of block that you just couldn't get there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have no doubt. Like the 2 years prior, like 2018 and 2019 seasons, I felt like I had definitely higher in consistency in my finishes. I was at that point, I already had, 10 to 15 top 10 finishes, and they were all kind of consecutive. So I knew I had it in me. I was trying to convince myself that I was capable of winning, and trying to convince yourself versus believing you can win, I think is two totally different things. So I think the first one, you kind of have to get a little bit lucky. You kind of got to just forget about the overall goal of winning and just shoot every shot. Just like, that's the only thing that matters. And so once you can do that, I think you're truly shooting against yourself. You're not competing against anybody else but you. And that's a hard thing to learn. For me, it was. And so, I mean, once I learned to do that and just focus on every shot at a time, for that moment in time, at the end of the 2019 season, I found like it was a lot easier just to win. Just focusing not on an end goal, just kind of trusting the process.
I think what happens after you win the first one, you talk about how you have to kind of believe that you can do it. And then once you know you can do it,
yeah,
you just shoot. Do you feel yourself shooting differently now than you did when you couldn't win?
I think just differently as like a maturity level. So PRS, there's so much that can go wrong and will go wrong. It's just kind of a matter of time. Like most of the times you can have majority of your stages go really well, 8s, 9s, and cleans, you know what I mean? But every once in a while, you're bound to get that 5 or 6 or 4. And when you really are ready to win, those those 4, 5s, and 6s, dropping quite a few points, it just doesn't rattle you like it did as an earlier or a newer shooter.
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a shift mentally, obviously, that happens. And like you said, the bad stages don't rattle you anymore, because at the beginning, when you have a bad stage, that's all you talk about. This. And then what ends up happening is that bad stage, I mean, it starts with a bad shot, right? And then the bad shot turns into a bad stage. And then also all you talk about, because you may have just cleaned everything prior, but then you have the one stage that's a 4, and that's all people talk about. And guess what happens on the next one? They'll shoot a 5 or a 6. And then now that just turned into a bad day,
Yep.
And it's hard to shake a bad stage when you're not mentally ready. Like you said, once your maturity level hits a certain point, you'll have those stages, but that they'll just average out. If you just keep shooting well, then it's just gonna not matter. But yeah, it's an interesting shift mentally that has to happen for you to go from almost winning to just winning.
For sure. Yeah, and you can lose that too. I was kind of trying to convince myself this year, like, what do I got to do to start winning again? Luckily, this last weekend, I just shot a match in Kansas, and that was my first, 2-day win this year. So I think it took, 10 2-day matches since the last time I won a 2-day. So yeah, you can kind of start to creep backwards a little bit, I think. And I was a little bit worried because I wasn't ready to do that yet.
Well, not only that, I mean, you're shooting against, right? When you shoot at the top level, you're not the only one there that can win. There's so many good shooters.
There's so many nowadays.
And they've all figured out the mental aspect of it, right? So now, if you don't win, most of the time it's not because you didn't shoot well. It's just because it wasn't meant to be.
Yep. For sure.
Like you said, now you rely sometimes just luck.
Yeah, it is. And there will always be an element of luck. The most prepared shooter usually finds his way to the top somewhere, in the top 5 or so. But sometimes, that shooter, even the best shooter at that particular match, doesn't always win. So this game, I've kind of just changed my brain into thinking it's not all about winning. It's just all about kind of trying to be consistent throughout a year. Anything really, when you think about it, a top 5 or a top 10 is kind of a win at these matches.
Yeah, for sure. There's just so many good shooters nowadays. Now, so you get invited to the AG Cup. Is it still an invitation, or is it a qualification type of thing nowadays?
It changed to a qualification. Yep. Yeah. So that first year was the only year that it was invite only.
How do you qualify?
Yeah, now
how do you qualify to go to the AG Cup?
Now it's just kind of intertwined with PRS. So there's regular season non-qualifier matches. There's qualifier matches, and then there's AG Cup qualifier matches, and they're all mixed into the PRS. So I think there's 8 total AG Cup qualifier matches. You have to buy a membership at the beginning of the year, and most of that money goes straight into the overall pot at the end of the year for the championship match. So after that, you basically just have to shoot 3 good AG Cup qualifier matches in the series to get an invite. And then they'll take, I think, the top 75 total at the end of the year. So
the way I understand it, you shoot for 3 days, but in reality, the third day, you have to do well in the first 2 to qualify for the third day, correct?
Yep. So you gotta have, it kind of gets a little bit weird with some math formula. But in general, if you're in the top 10 after the second day, the first 2 days are basically treated just like a 2-day match. with some differences, but for simplicity's sake, that's all it is. So if you get a top 10 after that, you're automatically in, no matter what happened throughout the season, into day 3.
So how did you do on those first 2 days?
First 2 days was kind of like a roller coaster, and it started like here, and it just kept going up. The very first stage of the match was one of the hardest stages out of the entire match, actually. So super hazy and misty conditions and rain on your scope and all that. And it was a 5-position, all at something like 1,000 yards on some small targets, some 3 4/10 mil wide targets, and off bouncy tires. So everything about the stage was hard. And I ended up dropping 5 points. And that was one of those things where you had to trust in your gear and trust in yourself. And I knew I had to climb back out of that hole that I just dug myself in. So it's just something I just threw out and shot as good as I could. So from that point on, I knew there was nowhere to go but up. And I really wanted to convince myself that just not being in the top 10 after the second day was just not an option. So I kind of got in a rhythm, and I ended up day 1 in 19th place. And day 2, I ended really good on day 1. So I probably ended with like 3 or 4 cleans, and that kind of gave me momentum going into day 2. And I just kept that momentum going. And I had a really good day 2, and climbed up to second after the end of the 2-day match.
Wow. So you went from 19th to second on day 2.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's impressive.
It was really cool. This match is unique. It was the first time that we had the ultimate ballistics, the live scoring. So once you were done with a stage and you approved your score, it went straight to a live scoreboard. So it was really cool to see me climbing, every stage that I had a good score, just kept going up 1 or 2 or more slots. So it was really fun.
Yeah, just kept that momentum going.
Mm-hmm.
So you you finally end the 2-day match of the AG Cup, the first 2 days. Now you're in second place. You have all that momentum going, right? I'm sure there was a lot of people telling you how great you were shooting.
Yeah and no, but I mean, it was all, everybody was focused kind of on themselves. I don't think we had too much distractions or anything. And it was a fun match. Like, these are all some of my best buddies, so it's not all serious business. We're kind of trash talking and having fun and, getting in each other's heads in a fun way. So it wasn't all just complete stress on the match itself.
Who finished first?
I wish Austin Bushman.
Okay.
Yep. And me and him, especially at that time, we trash talk every single chance we get because we both like it. It's fun. And he's a great guy.
So
but yeah, he won the 2-day. So there was a I think $5,000 prize for the 2-day win. So he got that one.
what about, so now you're the 2-day match is done. Now you're going into, you move on to the final match, where only top 10 get taken pretty much. How many go to the last?
So this year, like I said, it's kind of confusing the way there's some second chance opportunity qualifiers. So it depends on how well you did throughout the season. So now your season points can kind of help you get into the championship match. And with tiebreakers and second chance guys, I think there was something like 16 or 17 that ended up qualifying for the 3rd day.
So you go to the third day, but now all the scores get wiped clean, right? Like now everybody starts at the same place with 0.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? What was the preparation mentally or, mechanically going into the last, the championship day? Did anything change?
No, not really. And some people like the scores reset. Some people don't. I personally, I didn't like being down a couple points to Austin going into the last 10 stages. So I was perfectly happy with the reset. I didn't mind that everybody was at 0, especially because like I said, I had kind of momentum just building and building and building. So at this point, I had just 100% confidence in the gun. And it was just a day I felt really good. I was ready to perform and I wasn't going to let, any high stakes match stress me out. I just treated it just like any one day match.
What about your gear? Is there anything that you do day to day to keep it running good?
It was a little bit rainy and in not perfect conditions. And the gear, it ran really well throughout. And I didn't know if I wanted to clean my gun in between day 2 and 3. But with how good it was shooting throughout the second half of day 2, I decided that I wasn't going to touch it, and I was just going to shoot it just like a brand new match. But I wasn't going to let anything like that get in my head. Having a dirty gun. A lot of guys were cleaning their guns after day 2, which I don't know if it would have affected anything. I just knew I didn't want to do anything to mess with my mental game.
What about bolt, lubing, any of that? Do you do any maintenance on your bolt?
I don't really have to in the southeast or eastern parts of the country. If I'm shooting in Oklahoma and the dust is getting everywhere, you don't really have a choice. You got to take that thing apart and clean it.
All right, so day 2's over. You climb to second place. That night, you just treat it like any other day, huh?
Yep. I mean, at that point, I was probably in my low 50s for the PRS 2-day matches. So I just treated it just like every other time. It still wasn't the same feeling. I probably woke up at 2 or 3 and couldn't go back to sleep, but I don't think it was out of nerves. I think it was more out of just excited, which is a little bit different than the other 2 days.
Yeah, for sure. So now you're going into day 3. Walk me through, what happens when you get there, and then because the rest of the day I assume just kept getting better and better and better. So I just want to start at the beginning. How, what was it like getting there and getting started?
So we had some John Scouting interviews first thing in that morning. And so I got to the range at like 7 and we knocked out just a quick, what are you using type of, gear interview, and how are you feeling, and where's your mentality at? And so knocked that out. And then after I got done, got with a couple buddies and just talking just like we normally do. We don't get to see each other every day. So still kind of catching up and keeping that little bit of trash talk going before the match starts. So once everybody got done with their interviews, we ended up going to our first stage. And right then, the reality of the match kind of started settling in. And I still had those butterflies and the jitters, but I think that's just pretty normal at every match I go to.
So you guys, do you guys get put into squads, or does everybody go to the same stage?
This match was broken down. We had 16 or 17 guys, so it was broken in half. So we had 2 squads going, and it was all based on your 2-day finish. So it took first through 7th or 8th, and then the second squad was 8 through 16 or 17, however many guys were there.
Okay.
And you shot in that order. So Austin Bushman, he was first up on stage 1.
And that was throughout the day. You were going after Austin every time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And it was you just rotate through. So he shot first on stage 1. Next guy shoots second on stage 2. Next guy, and then it just keeps rotating through.
Right. So you talk about the trash talking you guys do. What kind of trash talking goes on?
It's all in good fun. It's hard to think about any specific thing, but it's all in good fun. Like there was one stage early on, I think it was the second stage, where it was shooting through some railroad ties with a port cutout, and I wanted to use a tripod for rear support and then kind of like a little gamer plate on the front of the gun. So, I mean, once you get a good position like that, it's just rock solid. It's like shooting prone. And I just miscalculated the height of my tripod, and it was like so stuck. Like I don't know how I was able to just calm down and get it set up the right way and readjust it. But clean that stage, and after the stage, it was just like, man, that could have went really bad type of stuff, or, you look like an amateur or something like that. But I think we had, that kind of talk back and forth throughout the day. So I think Dave Preston, he shot his first 5 shots and then made a slight move on that exact same stage. And right before he was getting set up to shoot his last 5 from his second position, he dropped his mag. And stuff like that, you can't let it go. You gotta chime in, and luckily he was able to get it put in and clean that stage. So it's not too painful. If he would have dropped a bunch, obviously you wouldn't be talking about it, but
yeah, it's always fun to pick at them when they shoot clean, but like you said, could have went real bad. And sometimes when they do make a mistake and they don't, they drop a bunch of points, everybody, and I've been there, and everybody kind of just gets quiet and they feel bad for them. And
yeah, it's like I said, it's all in good fun. We wouldn't ever do anything to hurt someone.
Yeah. But. So you go shoot your first match or your first stage, and were you kind of still excited, somewhat nervous at that time, or were you just in game mode?
Yeah, I was excited and nervous. So the way it worked out, I finished second after the 2-day, but I believe I still shot after Dave, because I want to say we tied or something. So it went Austin and then Dave and me. And so they both dropped a couple shots. I think Austin dropped 2 and Dave dropped 1 on his first stage. So the conditions didn't look too bad to me. I was kind of like a little bit surprised or curious. So I was kind of trying to just go through what could have went wrong. And cause this, particular match, you can't be glassing while they're shooting. You can't be on a spot and scope or binos. And you just have very, very little time to see what's going on before you start shooting. So every stage you had 30 seconds to glass right before you shot. And they said, all right, your prep time's done. And then you pretty much 5 or 10 seconds after you were on the stage shooting. So yeah, the first stage, it went really good. I saw my shots really good. It was a 5 target, 5 position kind of troop line near to far. And I was seeing how good my bullets were hitting in relation to the center of the target. And I just kept that going and kind of adjusted on the fly, and, got that first clean. So after that, kind of the nerves just kept going down more and more.
Yeah, as your confidence grows, your nerves go down. That's that's a pretty common thing, right? Because the reason you're nervous is it's the uncertainty of what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
So you get the first clean. How many other people cleaned it?
I'd have to go back, but I would say out of our squad, we probably had half the guys clean it.
Okay. So at that point, you didn't feel like you were pulling away or anything. It's it's for one stage, but
Yeah.
So you were
No.
yeah. So then you go to the next
There were too many
stage,
good shooters.
and what was that like?
That was the one, like I was saying, that I had some problems with equipment just trying to get into the prop okay. And yeah, after fighting through that and cleaning it, because it was a little bit of a hard stage. I want to say there was 2 KYL racks, one at 450 and one at 650-ish. And so starting with a fairly generous target, and you got to just kind of fine tune that adjustment back down to the targets. Usually 3 is when it starts to get pretty challenging, and then 4, it's getting real close to MOA, and then 5, they're getting close to sub MOA. So it's all about just seeing everything as perfect as you can and breaking good shots and hoping the wind doesn't switch on you. So after cleaning that stage, I was like, man, I was feeling really good, and I knew the gun was on fire. And like you said, the more hits you have, the better your confidence raises up.
What was the weather like, conditions?
The weather was about as perfect as it gets. We had real light variable winds throughout the entire day, and it was overcast. So as far as like just spotting your trace or your hits or misses, I don't think the conditions could have been any better. So, I mean, that was a huge part of, I think, how I could have cleaned the whole day.
Yeah, it helps to see your impacts. I mean, because like you talking about for those KYL stages, know your limits. You start with a big target, and then you start to gradually, the targets start to get smaller. So you have to get, you use the big targets to start getting centered up as you move on, because that's the only way you're going to hit the small target. Correct?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, you can't have, there's just hardly any room for error once you get to those. So anytime I'm shooting at those, like there's always a possibility of missing, but once you see that target swing, and usually it reacts, more aggressively than any other ones, it's just the best feeling in the world, watching that thing just fly back. Because usually they're all on a reactive sort of strap or hanger or something like that. So
now, being the third shooter in your squad, were the targets painted fresh overnight?
Yep, they were.
So that also pays to be high up on the ranking, correct? Because you get, like Austin, he had freshly painted targets.
It does, but since we only had 2 squads, pretty much the entire day 3, we were shooting fairly clean paint, if that makes sense.
Right.
So yeah, even though we had our whole squad go through that one, by the time we got to the second stage, the second squad already shot that, but it was still, not completely grayed out. There was still plenty of space where you could kind of see your hits and correct.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's helpful, I guess, if you're the first shooter on freshly painted targets. We shot a match at K&M, and towards the end of the day, we had to shoot our squad had to shoot out to, it was a troop line that went out to 1,200 yards. And they gave us the option. It's about 2 or 3 p.m. They said, well, you guys are kind of ahead of schedule. You can shoot it right now, or you can shoot it tomorrow morning. And believe it or not, a lot of the people in the squad wanted to shoot it now. And I thought, no. Tomorrow we can shoot early in the morning with freshly painted targets. Think about it.
Yeah.
So
with clouds too.
Yeah. So finally I convinced, and I was the F-class guy, right? But I'm going, think about this. It's heavy mirage right now. But anyway, so yeah, it was. So the next morning we come back and it's like, man, crystal clear. Impacts were very easy to see. It was the way to go.
Yeah, that area has always been the bane of my existence. Like, because I've shot there a couple times in the midday with mirage just cooking, and man, it's tough on that 1,200 yard. You're talking about that far left part of the range? Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah. They changed that 2-day match this year. So, and I think it was a good change. It kind of made the the match more fair overall. So like I said, just at the regular 2-day match, they had a 600, 700, and 800. Two shots each, near to far, and then back 700, 600. So it was more doable shooting in heavy barrage.
You get past the second stage. Mm-hmm. You had the little bit of a hiccup with your tripod. You get through it. Mm-hmm. Then the next one, you have to shoot first.
Yep. So I think this is the kind of the real turning point in the entire match. And I would argue, and I think everybody would agree, that this was the hardest stage of the entire day. I don't know if you watched the Shooter's Mindset or the John Scouten Shooting USA production, but it was out of this real wobbly, like deer blind. Mm-hmm. And the stage was something like 480 yards. There was a plate rack of just circle targets, and you had to transition one shot left to right on that. And then you had to go to target 2, which is 1,061 yards, and it was a 66% IPSC. So it was really, really a tough stage. So I decided to hold over on this stage, and because the targets were so clean, and I was the first shooter on that 1,000-yard target, I could see where every shot was going, and I was just able to make minor corrections and luckily clean that stage. And after that, I was really relieved because I was 30 for 30 at this point, and checking the scoreboard at this point, guys were already starting to drop a little bit, so it gave me a little bit of room.
Yeah, that's a tough stage.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're starting to feel even better, because this is not only was it a really tough stage, you had to shoot it first. Mm-hmm. So you don't have the benefit of to see how anybody else was shooting it. Well, you don't have that benefit anyway, right? On the AG Cup, or do you?
No, not really. So the first year I shot it was all completely blind. You had no view of the shooter as they were shooting. This, I think the last couple years, it's just hard to set up a match where it's completely blind like that. So you can look in that general area and kind of see what's going on, but you have no clue how to set up, tripod height or your bipod leg or, something like that. All the little tiny minute details. It's all still on your own.
So you get through this stage and now you're feeling really good.
You just realize as long as you don't have any train wrecks, you're going to have a chance at somewhere on the podium. Like I just felt ultra confident in the gun and in myself. So, but at the same time, you realize you still got 7 stages left, which that's a ton of shooting. A lot can happen there.
Right. So, as the day goes on, you keep shooting clean after clean after clean. And like you said, after 3 matches, you're already thinking, man, I might podium if I just keep this up. Mm-hmm. What was it like as you kept shooting cleans throughout the day?
So after stage 3, there was another long range right after. It was stage 4, and it was 1,000 yards far to near, 2 shots each. It was all prone. And again, it wasn't an easy stage at all. And I cleaned that one. And at that point, I'm already done with the long range. You know what I mean? All the 1,000-yard targets are done for the rest of the day. So I'm like, man, if I can hit and clean those, I have no reason to miss the close ones, really, because the gun's just on fire. So got through that one and the next one. And then I think by the time I got to stage 6, So this one was kind of a unique stage. You had to do 5 positions off of some big heavy duty like monster truck tires or tractor tires. And it was a transition from 4 something to 750 or something. So near, far, move, same thing. And I was really close to timing out on this. I watched a couple guys time out, and I was like, man, if I can just get through this stage, I think I'm going to win the match. So got through that stage. I shot my last shot right at the buzzer and got the hit. And so at that point, I'm 60 for 60. And I want to say I have a 2 or 3 point lead or something like that at this point. And I think that was the point where I changed my goal from winning the match to cleaning the match. Because I felt like no matter what I did, I wasn't going to miss.
So now the goal changes, which is obviously it's probably a goal you had you ever had that goal before?
Not directly. You always want to hit every target and you always want to clean every stage, but I knew it was a goal that was very, very high. And I just wanted to keep my mindset, clean. So I knew if I kept my goal high, I'd probably do something competitive at the end.
So now your goal changes. Now you want to clean the match. How did that change the way you were shooting?
I think it changed it just ever so slightly. And the only thing is all of these stages throughout the entire match. So 30 stages, every stage that you cleaned and had the fastest time, you won $1,000. And I think by the time I shot my 5th or 6th stage, that whole idea of winning stages went completely out the window. I just wanted to use every second I could and make every shot as perfect as I could and get in a position that was not compromised whatsoever. So the goal was 0 wobble, perfect shots, see every shot on plate and just make minor corrections to center. And then, really just hope the gun runs and don't have any equipment issues, because you're always kind of at the mercy of your equipment. And I had no reason to not trust it. So,
yeah. So you slowed down pretty much. Just
slowed down.
Stop worrying about being the fastest. Just you started focusing on cleans, nothing else.
Yeah.
Was there at any point from there on any matches that, any stages that you possibly thought, oh crap, this is going to be a tough one? Or were all those behind you by then? No.
So out of all the times I've shot at K&M, we were finishing the last 4 stages of the day on day 3 at a place I've never been to. It was the urban range. So, that stage where you shot the 1,200 yard stage. This is actually about the 500 yard line, kind of in the woods to the right of that area. And I never even knew it existed. So I was still cautious. And I didn't want to be too confident or anything. So, once we got up to there, though, it was all kind of shorter distances. I think the furthest target was 650 or something. So I knew my chances were good. We still had some tough targets to shoot at. So I knew the possibility of missing a couple was still there.
And these were not very big targets, correct?
No. I want to say something like the average target was 1.25 minutes. Yeah. So some bigger, some sub-minute.
So that stage that you're talking about that you didn't really know even existed, what was it like? What was the course of fire there?
There was some modified prone. One was modified prone off a car hood, kind of bouncy, and really tough diamond targets, 5-target troop line. And so that was our 7th stage of the day. And after cleaning that one, a lot of pressure went off, because at that point I knew there was pretty much 2 or 3 targets that could give me a trouble. And just every stage getting through those tough targets, it just gave me that much more relief. But at the same time, kind of pressure building, just with, the ability to clean a match like that. The last 2 stages were pretty stressful. At that point, all the trash talking kind of did go away, and everybody left me alone. And I kind of wish there were some people to distract me a little bit.
Yeah, because it goes that way, right? You start with kind of stressed out because you don't know what it's going to be. You don't know if your equipment's running good. You don't know if you're running good. And then the stress starts to go down as you're doing well. But as you continue to do well and you start approaching the end of the match, then it starts to climb back up again, because you want to know if you have what it takes to get it to the finish line with the same trajectory. And yours, I mean, you were shooting clean. That's a tall order.
For sure. Yeah, and it did feel like that. Yeah, kind of a midday lull and just ultra confidence back to, okay, I gotta pull this out and clean this thing. And yeah, those last 2 were tough.
So what were the last 2 stages?
So the second to last stage that I shot was a 12-shot, 4-position stage, and 3 targets that you had to alternate. And they were head-sized targets at something like 500, 550, and 6 something. So really not big targets, and a lot of moving, 1.5-minute stage still. So 12 shots in that time. And this was another one where my goal was just use every single second that you could and break perfect shots. And cleaning that was really, really nice, because at that point I was 92 for 92 and had I think a 4-point lead.
I want to emphasize this because you've been saying that you slowed down. You only have 90 seconds, so you didn't drastically slow down, because, like you just said, that's a 12 round stage.
Yeah.
In only 1 minute 90 seconds, so that's not a whole lot of time.
Yeah, I would say slow down as in take an extra half second, just to let the bag settle in and just consciously make an effort on, when you're breaking that shot, exactly when you want to. You obviously couldn't take a second or 2 just because you definitely would have timed out, but
right,
it's just that extra half second.
So now you get to your last stage. Tell me what that was like.
The last stage was a 10-position stage at 1 single target. And this target was probably one of the more generous targets of the match. I think it was something like a 10-inch target at 520 or something around there. So, I mean, this was a 0.5 mil wide target, I think. And that gave me some little bit of relief on pressure, but some of the first positions on this stage were not easy. Like, we were shooting off kind of wobbly tires at this point. And so my goal was just to really take my time on the first 3, which was the tires. And then after that, it was kind of shooting off really solid concrete props and a couple rocks. So that stage was a rush, because I didn't really notice it until after watching the videos. The entire place kind of shut down. I think the next squad over, they stopped shooting and everybody was watching. So you could have heard a pin fall, and it was just kind of cool. So after cleaning that, it was wild.
Right here. You can be our AG Cup winner, $30,000. just to see if he's going to get these running shots and how to come from the
What was it like as you were shooting it, though? I mean, because, now you have 10 shots left. And you said the first 3 were the tough ones.
Yeah.
What was it like? What was your mental process going through? What was going through your head as you're, number one, get through those first 3. But as you start approaching, you keep shooting clean and you keep approaching the end of the whole championship, it's still clean. Did your mindset change? Did any thoughts cross your mind that shouldn't have?
I probably had a little distracted points in my own mind that it wasn't anything to do with winning the match, because I just was so confident that was already over. I think around the 7th or 8th shot, I was like, oh crap, I'm about to do this. Like, this really gonna happen. Because I was seeing my hits and they looked well inside center of the plate. And, I try and not think about anything exterior, like, the end result, but I don't know if I could really help it at that point. So, really the last 3 shots was like, you better not mess this up, because you're not going to get this chance very many times. And then after that last shot, it was just such a adrenaline dump. And everybody just erupted and was all congratulating and cheering me on. And it was really special.
Yeah, I can imagine. That happens often. I think it happens just to everybody where you have a goal and you're about to achieve it. And somewhere in there, especially towards the end, kind of the last 3/4 of the stage, or you start thinking, I'm about to do this. I'm about to do this. And that's typically where people make a mistake, because now they just broke their concentration. Obviously, you were mentally strong enough to be able to just bear down and finish it. But that's typically what happens with newer shooters. Every time, for example, in F-class, we have 20-shot targets, 1 MOA. And typically, they'll be running clean, and they'll drop their 18th, 19th shot, or even the last one. And and of course, they're pretty devastated. And I just go up to them and I said, well, number one, congratulations. And number two, at what point did you start thinking, I'm about to do this? They're like, about shot 17 or 18, and that's kind of when they make that mistake. But obviously you push through, and man, congratulations.
Thank you. It was a day I'll never forget.
Yeah. So not only did you shoot clean, you won the AG Cup, which is a big accomplishment in itself. Even if you hadn't shot clean, that in itself is a big accomplishment. What has that been like since then? Because, everybody was talking about it. To this day, everybody was talking about it. I told you I had Austin on the podcast. I had John on the podcast, Tom Fuller. Everybody said, you got to talk to Ben. You got to talk to Ben. We want to hear, what it was like. I'm sure they've heard it a million times, but it's just that special that people want to hear about it some more.
It was kind of like it's hard to describe it, but it was a little bit bittersweet in a way, just because I've been shooting all this time, and even the chance or the opportunity to shoot perfect, it was just so far out of reach, I thought. But it was just it was hard to live in the moment until that last stage where we were talking, around the 7th or 8th shot or whatever. I was like, oh crap, I'm about to do this. Like, I don't know. It was so weird. It was kind of a blur, and at the same time, like, I can relive every part of that match. And yeah, just thankful it happened. Thankful.
Yeah, for sure. again, that was quite an accomplishment. So
Thank you.
what now? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, that was the part that was bittersweet. Like, what now? Like, where do you go from that? But I got a lot of life left in my shooting career, and I'm starting to get it back. This last weekend was really good, just to kind of get back on track of, starting to win again. And there's still some things that I'd like to win. So yeah, I mean, that'll always be like one of the most cherished moments of my entire shooting career. But there's still even still with all that, like a season like Bushman had or something like that would be really cool to come close at. So the next step is, really trying to fight for the golden bullet. And I'm kind of getting into a position where I can be competitive at the end of the year. And then after that, we're looking at the World Championships. So that's going to be another big goal of mine.
Yeah, that World Championship. It just, I mean, I know you guys are about to have your, what is this going to be, the second one?
Yes. Yep. And I didn't even pursue it the first time. It was over in France. So it'd be way out of my way to go and do that and expensive. So now it's going to be, I believe, in the US. I think they're finalizing on some things. So it makes it a lot more attainable and affordable. So I think it'll be a big thing, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
If I can qualify.
It sounds like you guys are going to have a World Championship every year, which is, it's pretty cool. We have it in F-class. We have it every 4 years. So it's even that much harder to win it. Right.
Yeah. And, I think the World Championships are every 2.
Oh, okay. Every 2.
But yeah, every 4 would be tough. I mean, I work for some Olympians in the Army Marksmanship Unit, and I don't know how they do it. Like the 4-year goal, that takes a special type of dedication. So I imagine you feel something similar.
Yeah, it's a you have to at least, okay, let me speak for myself. The way I approach it, I go and I just go balls to the walls for like the year before the World Championship.
Yeah.
And then right after I start to coast, because you have to. You can't maintain that level for 4 years. So I start to coast and maybe experiment with different things and play around with, I don't know, bullets or whatever, but I'm at the point now that I don't change anything. As much as I can, I don't change, but start to coast a little bit for 2 years, 2.5, and then start ramping back up to the levels that it takes to compete, and that's how I do it. It's just burnout is something that can happen, and it will happen. I mean, I've seen it happen to multiple shooters. They're just shooting so much that they just burn out. So
yeah,
you can't.
That's how I do it. That's a unique period of time too. Just with the 4-year, championships, because I can't believe how much gear and equipment and, projectiles and brass and all the pieces and parts of the game have evolved over just 4 years since I started shooting. And then what are they going to look like in another 4? It's tough to stay on top.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like I after the World Championship, that's when I play around with. If there's something that interests me, I'll play around with it. But for the first couple of years after the World Championship, I just kind of take it easy. Don't go to as many matches. Just like this year, I've been all over the place. But now I'm going to take it easy for the next couple of years. Maybe I'll shoot 2 or 3 matches a year, just the big ones. Maybe 4, and that's it. And then as I go into a World Championship year, then I start doing club matches, and I start doing multiple matches. I start going to different ranges to have to experience different wind conditions and all that, and just start ramping up. And then and then of course go to the World Championship and hopefully peak at the World Championship.
Yes.
So they can just coast right back down. But it's that's how I do it. It's my process, and it's worked well for me so far.
For sure. Yep. Got to avoid that burnout. I'm scared of the day that I'm gonna, throw my boots up on the wire and call PRS, career over. Because I see it too. Like, yeah, I see a lot of shooters just go way too hard, and then next year you're wondering where they're at, and I'm not ready for that to be over yet. So
yeah, for sure. So, man, I appreciate you doing this. I wanted to hear from you, from your perspective. That sounds like a hell of a day for sure.
Yep. Like I said, I'll always cherish that forever. And I'll always kind of, from this point on, just try and have something similar happen. So that'll be a good goal.
Oh, yeah.
Try and do what I already did.
Yes, sir, for sure. Nomination time.
Ooh, I'm not ready for this one. I've seen a couple of these before, and I might have to get back to you on that one.
That's fine. Think about it. But man,
are you planning on doing any, just out of curiosity, with anybody soon?
So I'll spoil it a little bit. You mentioned the Army Marksmanship Unit. I got Brandon Green coming up.
Oh man, he'd be great. Yeah,
he'd be
great.
He's on the schedule. But
good.
Yeah,
he's an awesome guy too. I think you'll have a great conversation with him. I was thinking about someone like Cale Harmon. He's kind of our up and coming PRS shooter, and he's got a lot of good contacts out Texas, and he kind of I'll have to get with him and see if he'd be willing to do it.
Well, he has to now. He's been nominated.
He has to. Yeah,
that's how it works.
He's got some serious potential, and this year is kind of his first year where he's getting really consistent, and I think he's going to be tough to beat here soon.
Well, good.
Yeah, I mean, he already is.
All right, man. Thank you for doing this, and we'll stay in touch.
No problem. All right, sounds good. Thanks, Eric.